Hello, welcome back. It is Out on That Line podcast, and we are doing another on the record episode. And this week, it's going to be finally Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run. But first, I'm here with my co-host, as always, Alex. How you doing this week?
Bad, bougie, savage, ratchet. I'm hyped. I'm ready. I'm all of these things and more. Let's get after it, Geoff. I love On the Record, and I love this week's artist. Let's fire it up.
I am so excited to talk about this. I've obviously listened to this album probably hundreds of times in my lifetime, but haven't really talked about it in depth on this podcast until today. But first, Alex, there is a crazy story that I was reading about featuring another kind of classic rock artist from a little bit later than Bruce Springsteen and certainly a little less talented. So Tommy Lee, the drummer from Motley Crue, has been married to this woman, Brittany Furlan. Let me make sure I have that correct. Yes, Brittany Furlan for, like 5-6 years, whatever. So apparently she has been getting these messages and stuff like that from a guy named Ronnie Radke, who is the lead singer of a band called Falling in Reverse. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is a piece of trash. He is a garbage man. So she's been getting messages from this guy and responding to him. And apparently it's been going on for a little while. This is the wife of Tommy Lee, the drummer for Motley Crue. So eventually she starts like going over to meeting places to meet up with him. And he all of a sudden always like just can't make it, whatever, what have you. She ends up going outside his house a couple times and like parking outside. And it was like an old address of his because it turns out she was getting catfished by somebody pretending to be Ronnie Radke. So Tommy Lee's wife is thinking she's going to cheat on him with Ronnie Radke, but it's a catfish of Ronnie Radke. And Ronnie Radke was none the wiser about all of this until like it was well underway. And she just refuses to believe that it wasn't really him. And this is one of the craziest kind of like rock star dramas that I think I've ever heard of.
So where in this whole thing, what's Tommy Lee's position? It's like she's clearly being catfished and
yeah, but obviously she was like
cheat.
planning to cheat. So I think if I were him, I could suppose you treat that the same as if she actually did. You
found the battle plans. They were all drawn up and she was waiting on the battlefield for the assault. And then it turns out the other army didn't show up.
Yeah.
Maybe don't go walking back into that one.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's insane. It's crazy that someone would do that if the ending of the story was like, and then she was pissed and now there's a lawsuit. But the fact that she's like, no, I know it was him and we had a connection and I will see it through. And he's just chilling somewhere like, no.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. I could not honestly believe that when I read it, but that is seriously one of the wildest like rock star stories I've ever seen.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't imagine, like, if you're Tommy Lee, you're like, I am married to an idiot.
To a dangerous idiot, yeah.
Yeah, that is a level of stupidity. That's not like room temperature IQ. That's like, you better like de-ice the freezer, IQ.
Yeah.
Like that is a wild thing to fall in a trap of. And for all people like Ronnie Radke. And this went on for long enough that like the fact that she never tried to get in touch with him for real or tried to find a different form of communication to like say, hey, is this really you? And just went with whatever chat service they were on. Like never, I just can't believe you let something get that far with somebody that's supposed to be famous. Like you should be able to find a way. You're married to Tommy Lee to find out if that is who they say it is. Like, how do you fall for that?
Yeah, exactly. You have all the tools in the world to verify this. You have the access. it's not like you have money because you're married to Tommy Lee, insofar as we assume he's been good with his money. So you have money, whether it's yours, his, or yours together. It doesn't really matter. You have the money to pay someone to go, yeah, don't fucking tell him I asked you to do this, but I need you to figure out if this is actually Ronnie Radke. That you could easily verify that. There's
Mm-hmm.
enough details there that make me think maybe, but figure it out. Within an hour, she'll have a DoorDash order and the answer to her question. And she
Mm-hmm.
can proceed. We have confirmation it is Radke. Proceed with a fare. I repeat, a fare is green to go. Operation Cuckold Eagle is on full go, full alert. All agents, all cars, all units.
Well, on that note, Alex, what do you say we talk about one of the most classic rock and roll albums of all time, in my opinion, the most classic rock and roll album of all time. It is Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. It is, in fact, where we got the name for this, well, where I got the name for this podcast, because I think I kind of forced that upon Alex with the name, and that's just what we rolled with. But this is what it's from. It is from this album.
Yeah, and I would just, as a quick anecdote, I would not say anything was forced at all, because you for a while had a music blog called Out on That Line. So when we were starting this, we were like, what's a name? We like knew we didn't want it to be something punny or something that someone else could like easily. And I just always thought, I'm like, Out on That Line is a cool tribute. It's a good name. It's not necessarily like, it doesn't necessarily tell you music podcast. Maybe that's to our own detriment, but you know, the other podcast I was on had a name that SEO looked at and shot itself in the head. So it's like, we don't know how to market this. So, you know, I'm 0 for 2, but I love it. I love the name, and I think it's a cool tribute to Bruce Springsteen. So you didn't force me to do anything, buddy.
Oh, well, it's good that you've got Stockholm syndrome bad enough now that
You better
I've
believe
now
it.
gotten away with that. Sweet. So Born to Run came out in 1974, and this was Bruce's third album. So before this was Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, and then The Wild, the Innocent, and the East Street Shuffle. So when you listen to those albums, you don't really hear a lot of what turned out to be on Born to Run. What you imagine Bruce Springsteen to be, if people are familiar with him, is things like Born to Run, Born in the USA, Darkness on the Edge of Town, and like kind of that era of his music. His first couple albums, while I consider them to be absolutely excellent, are not like the entry point for people on Bruce Springsteen for the most part. I think those are the ones you find after you're already pretty deep in the cult. Born to Run was the album, though, that really launched him into the stratosphere as a rock and roll star. The first two albums kind of set everybody up. Like, he was very highly rated, critically acclaimed, but people kind of couldn't really figure out what he was yet. He was sort of christened as one of the like new Dylans. I think, there's a few guys like that. I can't remember, like Donovan, people like that were, kind of christened as the new Dylan. And he would say that he wrote his first album with like a thesaurus in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other, is like the joke he would make about it. So it was like very wordy, like very intricate, very like kind of deep storylines that you had to really try to unpack and figure out if they meant anything. It was like a lot of it was very inspired by things like a Rolling Stone. The way that he would name the characters, and the kind of outrageous things they would do, and just kind of like playing with what a normal reality is, whether it be like a drunken haze or whatever it might be. But he was very much a like songwriter's songwriter for those first couple albums. And then Born to Run came out, and he combined that level of storytelling, narrowed the focus a little bit, and then put a dynamite band behind him. This was where you really found Bruce Springsteen like forming into what we all know and love to this day.
This was the birth of E Street.
Yeah. That's background, very long-winded from me, but what's your experience with this album?
My experience with it, as I told you when we were talking about what we were going to do for this week, and you were like, what's the Springsteen album you're the most familiar with? And this is by far it, because when I met you, you were like the big Bruce Springsteen guy, and I like barely knew anything. Again, cultural ubiquity, the handful of songs, Born in the USA, Born to Run, that are out there. It's like listening to 107.1 Frank FM. You might hear it and be like, oh, yeah, Bruce Springsteen. Then I met you and you were like really hyping him up. And I went out and I bought Born to Run on CD. And when I had like just started driving and listening to it, I was like, this is driving around listening to this music. I feel like I'm going to like drive like off a ramp and into the air and gently sail into this like mythical highway that he's talking about. The highway's jammed with broken heroes on a last chance power drive. Ooh, wait, imagine bombing around your hometown. You're 16 years old, you're full of piss and vinegar, and you hear that line. It doesn't matter that he wrote it years before you were born. It still means something to you. And I think that's one of the main reasons that this album, with the benefit of hindsight, was so successful, is because he expanded the appeal and the scope of what he was talking about. He took, like, from the first two albums, these very New Jersey, New York area focused, like telling stories about where he's from and his experiences and the people in his life, and making it a little more general. And usually generality is the enemy of art, right? But here, kind of making these stories that aren't necessarily him and his friends in New Jersey. They could be you and your friends in Pittsburgh. They could be some other guy and another group of people in Washington. Why not? They're loggers in Washington. Why can't they relate to the same thing that the steel mill worker is thinking? Because it's all these themes of the working class being sold out, but you can't kill a dream. And there's a highway out there, and there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of pessimism. And it's really well balanced the way the album is constructed in terms of where it starts on each side with hope and positivity and kind of ends in a bit of a darker place, but never really succumbs to being too depressed. It tends more towards the bright, the hopeful, the future forward, the gritty. And on top of all of that, we'll get into this. I don't want to keep yapping, but the production of this is legendary. It was a legendary slog and a controversial triumph, I would say.
Yeah, I think there's one thing you can say about the boss is he earned that nickname, and it's very affectionately said today, but I think when that first popped up, it was not the case. I think everybody's pretty well settled into their roles, and they understand they're all cogs in a machine that's just bringing people still a lot of joy all around the world. Those early days, I know like Steve Van Zandt was his pretty successful producer and songwriter, like even before that point. And he's continued to be outside of the E Street Band as well. To his detriment, he left right before some of the most like successful parts of their career. But he's obviously made that back, and he's done some other cool things like being on one of the greatest shows of all time, The Sopranos. But I think there was a little bit of like kind of getting used to being a second fiddle to a Bruce Springsteen. I think it's the kind of thing where it's like you might feel very good about your talent. You might very well have a great, successful career like on your own. I fully feel like there's every one of those people, Steve Van Zandt, Roy Bittan, Nils Lofgren, like Max Weinberg, any one of them would have latched onto another band and probably done just fine and had a successful career in music. They were all extremely talented musicians, but there's only one Bruce Springsteen. And I think that's what this album made very clear, is because there were a lot of shore bands, right? There was, Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes, famously, that Steve Van Zandt like was a huge backer of. There was John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, did the music for Eddie and the Cruisers. So like there was a lot of that. I don't think you really consider Jay Giles' band like to be, they're not a shore band because they're from Boston, I'm pretty sure. But they in that similar vein of music, right? But which of those have you ever heard that had the impact of a Jungle Land, where he has a line like, in the tunnels uptown, the rat's own dream guns him down? Like, just after you've gone through this whole build up, one of the greatest saxophone solos ever put on a record, and you just feel every single bit throughout every one of these songs. It's just you feel like you're walking right alongside him as he's either witnessing or like participating in all of this. The way he was able to craft all of these stories, starting with, in my opinion, the greatest song ever written. Certainly the greatest love song ever written, but in my opinion, the greatest overall song ever written, Thunder Road. Just starts with a harmonica, and then you just have this picture painted for you, and it ends so triumphantly. It's like you just witness this dead town, this like boring place, this like no jobs left. There's just no hope there. But there's Mary, and you pick her up and you leave and you go, and it's like you leave the town behind, and it's like you see it turn to dust in your rearview mirror as you go, and it's like this huge swell into one of the greatest. Like, I love when a rock and roll song gets rock and rolling, and when they really start hammering down on the drums, and you just feel the power out of every single instrument on this record. It just sets everything up so perfectly. And for that being the greatest song ever written, it doesn't like let up throughout the album. You'd think it would, that all the other songs would be worse, but it's just, as a whole, I don't know if there's one that's ever done better.
Thunder Road is a perfect song. Thunder Road is a perfect song, and not every song on Born to Run is. A lot of them are super close, and even the ones that aren't are up there. You want to talk about like this album start to finish and the quality of it, but Thunder Road setting the tone for this thing. It's it's an album that makes me nostalgic for a time period that didn't even get born anything close to. 74, 89 might as well be
Mhm.
2000 years, but like it makes me nostalgic for that time because of the storytelling. And again, it was expanded to not be so specific that I at 16 and me at 35 and my grandfather at 95, you know what I mean? Like everybody has a way into this song. It is perfectly constructed, perfectly written and arranged by him, perfectly meticulously worded. The Whiskey Thesaurus thing is very true, because you dig into some of the lore about this, and it's like he would spend an entire day working like one line. And it's
Mhm.
not like fun, like Paul Bunyan was as tall as and shaved his head with a wagon wheel. Like there's no element of like big fishtails in this. Everyone agrees that like, yeah, it was annoying as fuck. He would take an entire day to work on one line because he had to get it perfect. A studio perfectionist, not unlike the gentleman in Steely Dan. Um, Titans,
Ugh.
Titans all around, Titans walking amongst Titans. Um, but like this is one of the most interesting aspects of this album to me, and I think Thunder Road typifies it, is the production. A lot of people took to it and were like, wow, this Phil Spector wall of sound approach is big, it's lush. And to me, the biggest advantage it gives is every instrument has a personality as big as Bruce Springsteen. If he's the storyteller, this is like his Greek chorus. Everybody gets a moment to shine. Everybody sounds amazing. The arrangements are tight. The composition is tight. The execution is tight. This thing, like the production on this, is a marvel. But there were contemporary reviewers who said it was overproduced, especially compared to the
Mhm.
first two albums. Overproduced to the detriment. People were calling it like a slog to get into, or a bad access point if you're not already into Bruce Springsteen.
Mhm.
And I get it. It's it being compared to the first two albums, but I guess with the benefit of hindsight, that's a wild take to me that anyone could be like, this
Yeah.
is too well produced.
Yeah.
It's a marvelous, marvelous feature of this album. It's not the
I
same without that level of effort.
I think if you just have to, because I know plenty of people that really don't get into Bruce Springsteen, and they've given it an honest go. You know what I mean? Like, I think wife of the pod certainly appreciates Bruce Springsteen, but she's probably not going out of her way to listen to him. I think it's just, if you feel it, like just how good he is. Like, if you can relate to that stuff, if you can kind of understand what he's trying to tell you, what he's trying to make you feel. I think when you have a song like Thunder Road, that it's just to start an album and to just kind of send you on that level of journey. And you just get this like emotional high point immediately right off the bat from that song. And then you carry right into 10th Avenue Freeze Out, like where it's like, good luck not getting moving. Cause that, like, I'll tell you, I've seen the boss 3 times now. 10th Avenue Freeze Out live might be the best live song that they do because it goes. It is funky. It explains kind of a little bit of the story, obviously sensationalized a bit about the E Street Band and Clarence Clemens joining the band. But it's, he's telling a story as like he's bad Scooter and he's like finding the big man. He's like trying to get his people together. And the little moments where he says the change is made uptown and the big man joined the band and it does hits a little sax solo as like the wink and a nod to Clarence Clemens. Like this was also the kind of kickoff of the relationship between Bruce and the big man. And on the album cover, like Bruce, I think no other album cover did he have anybody but himself on it. I'm pretty sure until this one. It was him and Clarence Clemens. And this really was the beginning of that relationship where they made it into like Bruce and the big man, and there was all this lore behind it. And I think this was where I'm glad you brought up Paul Bunyan. This was where that kind of lore started with the E Street Band. And then all the other ones started taking on their own personality. So you had like little Steven Van Zandt. You had Mighty Max Weinberg, who was just couldn't help but play his drums as loud as he could all the time, and it's just that's part of the magic of Bruce Springsteen is people that knew the live show wanted to hear that on an album, and Born to Run is the album that finally gave that to them. So no matter what like the critics said, it was already going to be like a Grateful Dead situation. Like it wasn't going to matter what sort of mainstream success like that he had. Like it didn't make a difference. He was going to sell out arenas forever from that point on because he was delivering exactly what his fan base wanted. And he just happened to hit that slipstream of there was a lot of people that wanted that.
I will say, in terms of 10th Avenue Freeze Out, you would be forgiven for thinking that could be an album opener because it absolutely could have been the album opener. It's a great show opener. I've never seen Bruce Springsteen live, but you and I and a couple other people did see a Bruce Springsteen tribute band.
Oh yeah,
live. And we were saying at the beginning, we're like, what are they going to start with? And I said 10th Avenue Freeze Out. And sure enough, and the place went right off.
But after 10th Avenue Freeze Out, Night is kind of what a lot of people think Bruce Springsteen is strictly. Night is the kind of song where he's talking about going racing, he's talking about going out and like, it's so many lines of like stepping out into the night, and it's just the idea of like, okay, now is when real life happens. Now is like I'm gonna go out and like see what I can find and make something of myself. And the night I think is looked at as this mysterious thing that you have to go and like shine a light on yourself. And that kind of through line is I think what a lot of people associate with Bruce Springsteen is they think all he sings about is like cars and racing and that's pretty much it. But Night, while an excellent song, it's crazy to say it's one of the like if you're going to call a weaker song on the album, it's one of them.
I think that's a fair assessment. But again, it's one of those comparisons where it's like even the weak, it's Pizza, even the worst you've ever had. It's still great.
It's only an 8 out of 10. Sorry.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I learned something very valuable from Girlfriend of the Pod's nieces. Whenever we were like, because I was just in Florida and we were hanging out with them, and they're just little kids, and they would always want to like race and stuff like that. And I would just cook them all the time. Not to brag, but I can outrun a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old.
You got to make them earn it. Yeah.
I would cook them. I'm like, no days off. Everybody doesn't get a trophy, and just cook them, just burn them. And they would never say you won or you lost or you came in last. They refused. They said, no, if there were 3 of us competing, you came in third. They gave you the dignity of a number, not an identity as a loser.
Mhm.
And I want to give that same dignity to Night. If it's eighth on the album, it's eighth on the album, baby. It's one integral piece of a juggernaut. So how you gonna complain about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really I think it's an excellent song. But we don't need to spend a ton of time on it because the run we're about to go on here, basically through the rest of the album, starting with Backstreets. Now, this is a song where if you listen to these lyrics, this is the kind of like fantastical Bruce Springsteen, right? He says, in a soft infested summer, me and Terry became friends, trying in vain to breathe the fire we was born in. And it's just, that's the poet Bruce. That's like the kind of stuff where I think Bruce should have won Poet Laureate at some point. I think Backstreets is where, when I think of Bruce Springsteen, like Backstreets is one of the songs that I think of. It's got a really heartfelt story to it. It's got every bit of power of the E Street Band. It's just one of those things that if that song doesn't like make you feel it, I'm not sure that there's a Bruce Springsteen song that's going to do it.
And it's carrying through when you talk about people thinking about the cliches of racing and the night and the highway and the streets and stuff like that. I think this is a song that has all of that, but subverts the idea of cliche because of the very interesting way that the lyrics are put together, the sound of this song, and the performance of the E Street Band. I mean, you have these. I absolutely love the first verse, like you said, "Soft Infested Summer," but especially the line, "Sleeping in that old abandoned beach house, getting wasted in the heat." Like that's an
Mm-hmm.
image. You can see that. You can see that. You can put yourself in that. So this is one of those like time and a place, very specific storytelling moments that I think in its specificity, it's a moment where the album takes on a real specificity, like something like Stockton's Wing, Duke Street Kings, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's very specific to a time and place. And I think that's like totally appropriate here to take this time out of a more broad and all-encompassing perspective to go pure Bruce. And I think it's that vulnerability and again, the just thick, thunderous performance of the E Street Band to like really sell this one and distinguish it from something like Night. Otherwise, I think you could make the criticism that Night and Backstreets together are redundant, but Backstreets makes itself stand out by the power of like the intimacy and the composition of it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to read the third verse because it's honestly one that just hits me dead center every single time. But laying here in the dark, you're like an angel on my chest, just another tramp of hearts crying tears of faithlessness. Remember all the movies, Terry, we'd go see, trying to learn to walk like the heroes we thought we had to be. Well, after all this time, to find we're just like all the rest, stranded in the park and forced to confess. To hiding on the back streets goes back into the chorus. But like, there's no business having lyrics that good in a song that rocks this hard. That's like a piano driven song.
Especially, yeah, like you said, piano driven, especially like the cherry on top. Like the song goes hard, and then it's like, here's the feature. And Bruce just like getting unhinged with the just that, oh, I can't even do an
Oh, just the
approximation of it.
guttural yell.
Just the
Yeah.
greasiest, grittiest growl that he's nothing I do will do it justice. It's just that characteristic boss snarl. And I
Mm-hmm.
love it. I love when he opens it up. You talk about like squealing down the blacktop. That's exactly what he's doing. And again, I appreciate those little performance ticks. Like, I don't think it was a conscious thing. Like, I want to sound like a racy car.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it just, he's so in the story and he's so in the picture in the moment that he just can't help but do it. The
Mm-hmm.
emotion echoes that feeling of just pedal to the metal. I'm 16. I'm in the parking lot at the high school. Nobody's going to get me here. I'm going to floor it and feel like a badass until suddenly I get an attack of conscience and go, my mom will get mad at me and hit the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
But for that 30 seconds, I was a free man. And I owe
Yeah.
that to Bruce Springsteen.
And it's funny because he's done interviews where he's essentially said things like, I've had a career of writing songs about things I've never done and only felt. You know, and it's just like that kind of line just like hit me that that's why these songs work. Is, you know, he's talking about these ridiculous things like getting wasted in the heat, like it sounds like he's burning up in the sun, like these things sound so intense and emotional and heavy, but it's because he really is earnest about it. You know, there's no faking it. He might be, you know, using something else to like explain how he's feeling than what actually made him feel that way, but the way he does it is you can see yourself in this car that seems like it's barreling for the sun and about to burn up. You know what I mean? It's crazy how he's able to do that. And a song like Backstreets is just, I think, underappreciated for its lyrical content. Um, and maybe it's just because it gets overshadowed by the next one a little bit, and maybe for good reason. But Born to Run, the title track of the album,
another
and like,
perfect song.
yeah, and this is the one. You know, if you want it, this is, I think, what absolutely encapsulates everything about Bruce Springsteen. I think if you're going to show anybody a song to try to get him into him, like, that Born to Run is the one. If they don't get into it here, it's just not going to happen. But this is the perfect example of, you know, the kind of fantastical lyrics, but every bit of it you can feel is like, in the day we sweat it out in the heat of a run, or in the day oh my God, why am I
Error.
this 18? Yeah. In the day we sweat it out on the streets of a runaway American dream. At night we ride through mansions of glory on suicide machines. And it's just like, you know, there's a way that you can write, oh, I was just driving fast with my friends on a summer night just being dumb. Like, there's a way you can write that, and then there's the way he wrote it. And it's just crazy to me, again, like the level of thought somebody is able to have to create lyrics like this and put just maybe the like most heartfelt, like kind of backing band performance on any record of any time.
And the cheeky, simple, earnest quality of the second verse, to me, when people talk about like, oh, the streets and the car and the highway and all of that representing possibility, there's one thing people also forget characterizes the boss is he is smooth. He is smooth as eggs. And you look at this second verse, and in all seriousness, the way that it's worded, every single part of it is perfect. It's evocative, it's imagery based, and it's one of those things where he obsessed over every single line, and you can tell the way that this came together. Perfectly worded. If you change one syllable, you kill the whole thing. Wendy, let me in. I want to be your friend. I want to guard your dreams and visions. Just wrap your legs around these velvet rims and strap your hands across my engines. Together we could break this trap. We'll run till we drop. Baby, we'll never go back. Will you walk with me out on the wire? Because, baby, I'm just a scared and lonely rider. That as an appeal, like picturing him having that conversation with Wendy, that's his appeal to her. I want to guard your dreams and visions. Do you want to fool around in my cool car? We're going to live forever. Someone calls themselves a lonely rider. What are you supposed to do? Laugh in their face? No, you go, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And I'm absolutely going to do it with you in the back of this car, man.
Yeah.
And that's like, again, in all seriousness, like I make it like jokey joke, but it's that lived in quality. You know, I write about things I've never done, but I feel like I felt. Well, if you've never done this, this is highly evocative. And if you have done this, good for you. It sounds like it was fun. It's that slice of life stuff that everybody can relate to. A first love, a second love, a crush, a fling, that special someone, and a hot summer that you'll never forget when you were young and everything was the night, the streets, possibility. That's where you're coming at this from. I just think, again, it's a perfect song guided by this perfect sentiment that we've all felt. I got to get out of this town. I'm bigger than this town. I got to blow out of here, just like Thunder Road.
I've always kind of felt like this album was like kind of like the other side of the same coin of Bat Out of Hell, like the first Meatloaf album.
Apt and interesting comparison.
And it's, you know, there was a lot of crossover between the musicians that were on both albums as well. So like that might have something to do with it, but it's just these big epic like rock ballads, and I've always felt like maybe the Meatloaf version was like the dirtier side of the coin. You know, there was certainly things
Yeah.
Meatloaf was willing to say. Well, I guess what Jim Steinman was willing to have Meatloaf sing in the songs that were a little more suggestive, and than something that would be in Bruce Springsteen songs. But Born to Run, I think, is and this is where we got to shout out Tanner, best friend of the pod, and we wanted him to be on this episode, but it's like we got to do what we got to do. We never talked about Bruce before. We'll do another Bruce album with him. But I think he put in your high school yearbook, right? Like the bridge of this.
He did. He sure did.
Yeah. Just what a.
Or I guess technically verse 3.
Yeah. Just a true devotee to Bruce Springsteen and specifically this album. So shout out to all the Tanners out there.
Absolutely. This is yearbook worthy crack. I remember when he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm like, that's when it crystallized for me. I'm like, oh, Tanner's a music guy.
Oh, yeah.
Cut 2 decades later, and look what's become of him now. Biggest music guy I know.
Yeah, probably if he could get paid to go to concerts, like that's all he would do.
You just get that man a nice plush adult diaper and send him cross country following fish. He'd be the happiest man alive.
Yeah, he should find a way to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't. So one of my favorites, like Dark Horse, one of my favorites on this album is the next song, She's the One. This is where, if you've ever gone through a little heartache, some little Philly broke your heart, this is a really great song to listen to. Specifically the lyrics that I really want to like kind of point out here, where it says, that thunder in your heart at night when you're kneeling in the dark, it says you're never going to leave her. But there's this angel in her eyes that tells such desperate lies, and all you want to do is believe her. And it's, again, like he's got no business writing lyrics like that profound in songs that end up going as hard as this, and where he makes it sound like, huh!
Yeah,
it's just like that lyric and that sound is in the same Bruce Springsteen song.
I love the second verse of this song. It's start to finish, and I won't like ramble read the whole thing, but tonight you'll try just one more time to leave it all behind and to break on through. She can take you, but if she want to break you, she's going to find out it ain't so easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you sure about that? That seems like you're posturing, because it sounds like this girl's going to rip your heart out.
Yeah.
If you lose your composure for 1 second. It's, again, the picture that he paints with these beautiful, meticulous words. There are certain songs you can listen to and go, holy shit, in a bad way, this feels like a rough draft. Or this feels like they nailed it on the first take. They knew what they wanted. It came out fully formed, and don't overthink it. A Dochi-like approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have things that are a little more composed. Then you have things that are extremely composed. Your Steely Dans, your Elvis Costellos. I'm getting them all in, Jeff. I'm getting them all in tonight. And associating him with the boss, because it's the same level of meticulous introspection, but then also commitment to quality, putting it, like phrasing it in an interesting, intimate, quality way. It paints the picture of someone who's like that magnetic and that destructive, and not even necessarily it's in their nature to be that destructive. It's just the way they are for you. You lose all composure. You'd throw it all away. And it's this moment of wild abandon, because if we're talking about an album that's a lot about hope and possibility and frustration, all of that is in this song. Like the 5 stages of grief, but like the 5 stages of having the horn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think I like to imagine the woman he's talking about or singing about in this song is the same one from Bob Seger's Night Moves. From the first verse. Yeah, from the first verse of that one.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, I like to imagine in my head canon that Bruce and Bob Seger, that they're buddies. I don't know how much time they've spent together, or if they even like each other, but I like to imagine that up in heaven I'm going to be able to see a double bill Bob Seger Bruce Springsteen concert.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
The boss meets the beautiful loser.
But then moving on, because I definitely want to leave us a little bit of time to talk about Jungle Land, because that's going to be
Oh yeah.
meaty. But the song, I guess, interlude, would you call? I guess interlude is what I'd call it. But meeting across the river, and this is where the name of this podcast came from. And it's basically, it almost sounds like you're in, Bob Dylan's Greenwich Village, and you're just in this little coffee shop late at night, and some dude is up there just kind of rambling, and all of a sudden you start to kind of pay attention to what he's saying, and this is maybe for me one of the most like engrossing parts of this entire album, like is this track on this album, because I think it encapsulates every bit of hope, every bit of desperation, like every bit of a feeling that you want to escape or like prove yourself, like everything that Bruce Springsteen like is in this part, and generally in this part of his career, I feel like is boiled down into this song, and it sounds nothing like any other song he ever did.
Yeah, it stands out again, and it, like drawing positive attention to yourself with something that's a little bit different on this album, and especially in terms of album placement, it's the perfect song for the perfect spot because of what comes after. So I return to the top where it's like you would be forgiven for saying that 10th Avenue Freeze Out could open the album, and it would be a hell of an album opener, or it would be a hell of an album to open the second side on if you wanted to open the album with Born to Run. You have options. But the one thing that kind of forces your hand and forces the way that you have to think about this is Jungle Land. With Jungle Land, you can't have Thunder Road as the ender because Thunder Road could be an album ender too.
Mm-hmm.
It theoretically could be a side one ender, maybe, but wouldn't have the power of opener or ender. It's
Yeah.
one or the other. And you are not putting Jungle Land anywhere else on this album. So you can't end it with Thunder Road. It changes the whole composition of the album when you think about kind of the symmetry of the journey, both sides going from hopefulness and
Mm-hmm.
possibility to a little more introspection and frustration and kind of like one leading into the other. There's this introspection to it. There's this like time and a place and like a lot of imagery to it that then gives way to like, oh, the next side. And here we are. And we're kind of starting the cycle over again.
Mm-hmm.
Jungle Land is kind of setting up the future of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Where are they going to go from here? It kind of sets a new standard. It's a wild thing for an album to go all the way through and be this good. And then at the end of it, it sets a new standard for that artist, for that band, for the kind of work that's going to come out of them.
Yeah, and it's just this, it almost feels like some sort of like kind of detective noir movie. And I really feel like the narrator, I guess Bruce, I don't know if he ever names himself in the song, but him and Eddie are participants in Jungle Land. Where it's like you have this kind of zoomed in view of these people, and then it zooms out to like show you what they're, it's like this is their whole world, but it's like there's a lot of shit going on out here. There's a lot of people trying and failing. There's a lot of people falling in love and falling out of love. There's a lot of, there's just, a lot of lives that are just inexplicably linked together for no other reason other than they're in the same place at the same time and suffering from the same things. Jungle Land, in my opinion, it contains the greatest saxophone solo recorded anywhere. And you can fight me on that if you think there's a better one. But as far as like how it fits into the song, the kind of transition it pulls you through into the last part of the song when things, it sounds a little softer, but all the stories just got a lot harder. It to me, it builds you up into this thing where you're thinking all of these people are going to find their success, and it's like you kind of one by some of them do, and then but one by one you see them kind of dropping off. They've gone as far as they could. They're like the pieces of the spaceship that kind of fall off when they've served their purpose. In Jungle Land, I felt like was Bruce kind of like shedding all of these characters from this album and like kind of almost a way of like writing himself out of it, and kind of ending the story and like ending this emotional toil that it's taken on him, and it really feels like its own journey in itself, but at the same time the end of the journey that you've just gone on with Born to Run as an album.
With a 10-minute epic and the greatest saxophone solo ever recorded. Because if someone wants to fight you on that, I will be behind you going, yeah, get him, Jeff. And I'll throw a few kicks in there while you got him down, ground and pound. I'll get in there. I'll weasel it. I don't give a shit. Every dynamic needs a weasel guy. I'm your weasel guy on this one. I think another cool little piece of trivia about this song to go along with the fact that it's a beautiful epic with all of these personal stories, all of these characters, their hopes and dreams, their despairs, their regrets, they're wrestling with like existence and meaning, and they want to get out and explore this world and get away from the spray of shit in this small town. But there's also this kind of sense that you won't get away. You could, you'd like to, maybe you won't. There's a darkness to it. There's also a hopefulness to it because you could just as easily get out. This song strikes such a perfect balance of story vignettes, character-driven material, but also kind of expressing this more general idea of hope and possibility to the audience, to the listener. Like, yeah, this is all pretty dark, fucked up stuff, but in the end, you can get out. Will you? But you can. And a song that was recorded right up to the wire, like right down to it. So the little piece of apocrypha I have here, Jungle Land took the longest time to be recorded out of any song on this album. It was rehearsed at 914 Sound Studios on January 8th, 1974. On July 12th, 1974, it was played live at the Bottom Line in New York. On the final day of recording, July 20th, 1975, Springsteen and Clarence Clemons were still working on the sax solo, which was finished as the band was leaving for the first performance of the Born to Run tour that night.
Mhm.
Kind of wild that it was literally like down to the wire on the most epic element of this song. And it's a testament to the craftsmanship and how lived in this is. It's an album that feels alive every single time you listen to it. These stories come alive. The personality in the musicians, like in the roles that they inhabit, the sound, the production, it all comes to life. It's a perfect piece of storytelling in 39 minutes.
Yeah, this is, if you haven't listened to this album, folks, like this is your call to do so. Like if you've ever enjoyed rock and roll, if you've ever enjoyed storytelling, like there is so much to this album. And I love how you were describing Jungle Land because it almost feels like there was a darkness on the edge of town there, Alex. Yeah. And this is the songwriter that and performer that Bruce Springsteen would be basically from this point when Born to Run came out and when he was making these songs right up until now. You know, there's been very little time periods where he's gone off and done, you know, kind of those little side project type things. But even the Ghost of Tom Joad, he like toured on that album, but it was Tom Morello and it was years after it came out. You know, and it's just like he's always just done what he's wanted to do. You know, and I think that when he felt like he wanted to get more into like synths on his record, people were up in arms about that. I don't think quite the level of like when Dylan went electric, but you know, there was a lot of people not happy about that, you know, and especially when he went for his real solo stuff, like late 90s, early 2000s, I think, before he got the band back together. You know, there was a lot of people that say they don't like that music as much, but it's the E Street Band, I think, reinforces everything about Bruce Springsteen. And I think is the best version of Bruce Springsteen is when he's playing with the E Street Band, but he was still pretty damn good when he was driving the bus on everything when it came to making the music. So like to me, Born to Run is the peak of his ability, you know, in a career of a crazy number of great albums, a crazy, like Darkness on the Edge of Town, Born in the USA, Greetings from Asbury Park, The Wild, the Innocent, the E Street Shuffle, like even up till now, like the Magic album was fantastic. Wrecking Ball was awesome. The latest one, Letter to You, was awesome. I even like The Human Touch. I like Tunnel of Love. Like those albums were great too. Um, I really just he's very rarely missed. I think that working on a Dream album is pretty roundly regarded as not the favorite of the fan base for sure.
Yeah.
But any song you hear live from Born to Run from this album, it will melt the place down every time.
Well, and he's got longevity, he's in good health, he's got the stamina, but time is a wasting, and I got to see him live soon. I have to be ready. He's probably the one person at this point left that I'll shell out the big money for.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the
Right
time,
there.
I'm like, nope, I've got a limit. But he's the guy I'd spend maybe, well, not necessarily Taylor Swift money, let's put it that way, but because some people will like leverage their
Yeah.
house and the naming rights to their child to see the Eras tour. I'm not doing that. But
No, the boss will make it worth it.
yes, I want to, while he can still do 4-hour Boss.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go. I gotta know. So, to me, this is a seminal rock album. It reverberates backwards and forwards in time with a wide reach. You can draw a straight line from this all the way to something like Nirvana, Nevermind.
Mm-hmm.
You can, which again is another seminal rock album. And I think for me, those like the two things sound very different. Born to Run and Nevermind are like night and day different in terms of the sound, but the storytelling quality, the earnestness of it, you don't get much more raw and real than Kurt Cobain. And I think in a far more optimistic and at that point probably relatable way. I know there was like the disaffected youth would relate to Kurt Cobain and say this
Mm-hmm.
all feels kind of like pointless and meaningless and scary and I'm struggling. Whereas the struggle was kind of romanticized in the music of Bruce Springsteen,
Mm-hmm.
where there was an optimism, a hopefulness, and this quality of honest, introspective storytelling that I think changed the game for him in his career and set a precedent going forward for what singer songwriters could do on a rock album.
Mm-hmm.
It just a classic album.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic album. And folks, we appreciate you. If you're still with us, we appreciate you sticking around. Please go check out this album. You can find plenty of other on the record episodes right here at Out on That Line podcast, which you can find www.youtube.com/C/out on that line. You can find all of our regular podcast episodes, all of our reaction videos, all of our on the record videos. I think there's some other spin-off ones we might have done here and there. We've been at this for a while, folks. So if you want to still join the party when it's still kind of, I don't think it's that early anymore for us. We're got a couple thousand followers at this point. So if you want to join the party, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit that little notification button. Leave us a comment. Most importantly, tell us maybe what classic album you'd like to hear us do next. Maybe it's one that Tanner hates and we can make him suffer through talking about it with us. That would be fantastic. Alex, was there any other final thoughts that you had this week?
We won't do Fish.
No.
We won't do it.
No.
We won't do Fish. Don't
No.
ask. Don't bother. We're not doing it at
Nope.
youtube.com/C/out on that line.
Yeah, we will not be doing Fish.
No Fish.
Never once. Not. We might do Grateful Dead someday. I'd be open to that. Bet you Tanner would too.
I'm becoming more and more of a kind of concentrated deadhead as time goes on. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, it is inevitable for you, Geoff.
Yeah.
We're coming for you.
Like it's just a quicksand. Once you step in, it's over.
I'm done. I'm cooked.
Yeah.
Multiple t-shirts.
Yeah. It's like a nonstop AA meeting.
And I never wanted to end, man.
Yeah. Oh, well, folks, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you catch us next time. And until then, until next time.
Nice.